How's it going, you guys? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Hope you had a wonderful off weekend, but we're back. Talladega's this weekend. We've got a lot of news to catch up on, a lot of little stories, a lot of little tip-ins to talk about, so let's get started. Before we get too far into this episode, however, I do want to send my sincere condolences to everyone at Junior Motorsports and, of course, all the Earnhardts. Brenda Jackson, mother of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Kelly Earnhardt, passed away this past weekend at the age of 65 after a battle with cancer. It's always a very sad day when a beloved member of the NASCAR community passes away. So just wanted to let everyone know that everyone at Junior Motorsports, obviously Dale Jr., his sister, and everyone, they're in my thoughts, everyone here at the show, which is just me, but we're thinking about all those people involved. That's very sad news to hear. Now, on the news side of things, we do have a driver and a race team making their Cup Series debuts this weekend at Talladega. Let's focus on the race team because it has to do, again, with an Earnhardt. Extreme Concepts Incorporated is making their Cup Series debut this weekend, running the number 81 Toyota, driven this weekend by Jeffrey Earnhardt. This team made their Xfinity Series debut just a few weeks back at Texas. They're set to run 4 more Xfinity races this year, as well as 2 Cup races, both Talladega races. So starting this weekend, though, they will be making their first ever Cup Series start. It's a 40-car field, I believe, on the entry list, which means, assuming they can at least make a lap in qualifying, this team, the 81 car, they will race on Sunday and make their official debut with Jeffrey Earnhardt behind the wheel. He's no stranger to the Cup Series. He's raced in the Cup Series plenty of times before, but haven't seen him in a little bit. It's worth noting, I did mention that this team is a Toyota team. They are aligned with Joe Gibbs Racing, and from the sounds of it, this is a partnership they plan on working with going forward. In a statement from, I think, back in February when they first announced that they were going to run some races this year, the people over there at Extreme Concepts said that with this partnership, with this alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing, their goal is to eventually become a full-time Cup Series team. This is, I guess, officially the first major stepping stone. You got to make your first start before you actually become a full-time team. You got to learn to crawl before you can walk. I think that's how the saying goes. It's cool to see a race team actively investing and trying to get into NASCAR these days, especially in NASCAR's top level. So hopefully they can be competitive with Jeffrey Earnhardt, who ran well in the Xfinity Series race at Daytona earlier this year. You never know. Maybe they can pull off an upset. Top 10 maybe? It wouldn't shock me. Justin Haley is making his Cup Series debut for Spire Motorsports, driving the number 77. The Fraternal Order of Eagles is going to be his sponsor, so a familiar logo, familiar paint scheme for Justin Haley there on that 77 car. But yeah, he is making his official Cup Series debut. He drove in the Truck Series last year. This season he's got a full-time ride in the Xfinity Series, making a small jump here, at least a brief jump, to the Cup Series side of things. Talladega brings out these types of teams. I know Brendan Gaughan is racing this weekend. Parker Kligerman's racing this weekend. There's a few other guys that kind of, they only really show up for these super speedway races because, the super speedways, Daytona, Talladega, kind of puts the field makes the field a little more even. So a lot of times you see drivers or teams kind of make their debuts at the super speedway races. So not too surprising, but good luck to Justin Haley. Be nice to see him do well in his debut. Now, we're not quite ready to dive all the way into Talladega just yet because I saw a very interesting tweet yesterday regarding future silly season, changes. And this report is about Kurt Busch. It's from Adam Stern. Let me just read you the tweet I saw. While there's been chatter that Kurt Busch's strong start at Ganassi could lead to an extension of his one-year deal, Ganassi COO Doug Duchart said today that talks have yet to begin. Most of my conversations with Kurt recently have been about the Cubs and Cardinals. There's more to this quote. Obviously, he's come in and done a great job. Monster's been a great partner so far. When the time's right, I'm sure we'll be talking to both of them. But right now, we haven't started any of those discussions. This could be kind of interesting. It's no secret Kurt Busch has completely outperformed most of our expectations so far this year. He's 7th in points, driving a car that didn't even make the playoffs last year. He's come in and immediately turned that number 1 team into a contender. Now, a lot of NASCAR driver contracts are kind of kept hush-hush, but we've known this for a few months now that Kurt Busch was on a 1-year deal. We already knew that. And so that's led to a lot of speculation about Kurt Busch and Chip Ganassi's future. Now, Kurt Busch is 40 years old, definitely still, I would say, still in his prime, probably towards the end of his prime, but still capable of winning races. He won a race last year. He's finished 2nd this year in that 1 car. So Kurt Busch still capable of driving, but we've seen how the age of drivers retiring seems to be getting younger and younger. Tony Stewart was around 45, 46. Kenseth was 45 when he left the 20 car. Jeff Gordon was about 45. Jimmy Johnson's 43 and has 2 years left in his deal. So it feels like mid-40s now has become the new 55. Dale Jr. and obviously Carl Edwards were even younger than that when they retired, but it begs the question, with Kurt Busch at age 40 and a 1-year deal, could this be his final season in the NASCAR Cup Series. It's definitely something fans should start thinking of because it sounds like Chip Ganassi and Kurt haven't given it much thought yet, and I think that's immediately going to raise some concerns with fans. I remember when Matt Kenseth ultimately stepped away from full-time racing, when his deal with Joe Gibbs Racing ended, all throughout the season when people asked him about his contract updates, he just said, "Oh, I'm not really looking at anything. I'm not really worried about anything right now." And he said that in February, he said that in April, he said that in June, July, he said that in October. He basically said that all year long, and eventually it turned out he didn't have a deal, and Matt Kenseth basically retired. Kurt Busch, I know it's early, but right now they're giving us the, we're not looking at any sort of extension right now. That's a little concerning if I'm a Kurt Busch fan. This means that it could be the end. I'm not going to jump there yet, but I did say, months ago when the news initially broke that Kurt Busch was going to Ganassi on a one-year deal, I said then, and I'm sticking to it to an extent, I said then that perhaps this means Chip Ganassi Racing is looking at putting Ross Chastain in the one car for 2020. It's no secret that Ganassi loves Ross Chastain. They put him in their 42 car in the Xfinity Series last season for a few races and he blew them away. He performed great. They were going to put Ross Chastain in their Xfinity team this year full-time, but obviously due to sponsorship issues that weren't Ganassi's doing, that fell apart and ultimately they had to let Chastain walk away. But if you want my bold prediction here in April, I think there's a good chance that maybe Ross Chastain could end up in that one car next year. If Kurt Busch, if Chip Ganassi, they can't agree on terms, maybe Kurt Busch just wants to step away after this year. You never know. He's 40 years old. He is older than your average driver these days. Ross Chastain might be the perfect guy for Ganassi to look at. We'll see. Just want to throw that nugget out there because I thought that was interesting that people are already talking about silly season stuff, already talking about, future predictions as far as where drivers are going to end up. So it's never too early to start talking about it, in my opinion. All right, now I want to talk a little bit more. I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this video. Talladega Superspeedway is this weekend, and what makes this Talladega race unique compared to past Talladega races, past Superspeedway races even? This week's Geico 500 is going to be the first Superspeedway race in more than 30 years to not feature restrictor plates on the engines. That's right, as long as I've been alive, and probably as long as a lot of you guys have been alive, NASCAR has run restrictor plates on these engines at superspeedway tracks, Daytona and Talladega. It's a little thin plate with some holes in it to basically lower the horsepower. I think typically horsepower at restrictor plate tracks was like in the low 400s in the past. Like obviously they were running like 900 horsepower engines, but with the restrictor plate they were restricting them down to like 400, so they were killing those engines to keep the cars safe at restrictor plate tracks. But now this year, no restrictor plates. We did have restrictor plates in the Daytona 500, remember, but they announced it then that after the Daytona 500 a few months back, restrictor plates were going to be taken off these cars. They're just running the tapered spacer, and ultimately the package we're going to see at Talladega this weekend is pretty similar to what we've seen at the intermediate tracks this year. Tapered spacer is going to be on the car, which acts similarly to a restrictor plate, but it's not restricting the horsepower as badly as the restrictor plates did. The restrictor plates, like I said, would limit the horsepower down into the 400s. With this tapered spacer, engines are going to be turning about 550 horsepower like they have all season. So to compensate for higher horsepower, NASCAR is raising the spoiler even higher for this weekend's race. It's been around 8 inches all season long. They're bumping it up to 9 inches, adding another inch to that already ridiculously high spoiler. Not only that, but they're also adding a bolt down on the track bar to help raise the cars up a little bit, get them off the ground, take away a little bit of downforce to hopefully slow these cars down so they can get them to safe speeds. Last month, NASCAR reportedly did a test at Talladega and found that the cars were still going way too fast for their liking, which is why we've raised the spoiler and added this bolt on the track bar and everything. NASCAR is still desperately trying to keep these cars slow enough to where safety doesn't become an issue. Now with all these changes, no restrictor plates, different horsepower, different spoiler, all that type of stuff, a lot of the drivers, a lot of the teams, a lot of the fans really don't know what kind of racing we can expect this weekend. If you recall, and I talked about this in a video a few weeks back, a couple months back I think, Brad Keselowski said during a Facebook Live video that he thinks tandem racing, remember the two-car tandem where two cars just push each other along and that's basically what the whole field is? Brad Keselowski said that he thinks two-car tandem racing might return. Remember, we saw a lot of two-car tandem around like 2010, 2011. We saw a lot of it. And it produced some outstanding racing, some outstanding finishes, but I think most fans agreed it was a little too gimmicky and not something NASCAR needed long-term. It just didn't feel right. But according to Brad Keselowski, he truly believes tandem racing could come back. And I've seen other tweets, other reports from people inside the NASCAR garage that they're talking about tandem racing. That's definitely being murmured about throughout the NASCAR garage. I don't know if it's all just because Keselowski said that. Maybe other teams, other drivers are saying it too. I don't know. But let me just put it this way. We'll probably see some bump drafting. Some good old-fashioned bump drafting. In the Gen 6 era, we really haven't seen much bump drafting. Typically when people start bump drafting, wrecks happen. In the Cup Series at least. But this weekend, I think we're going to see a little bit of bump drafting. I don't know if that's a good thing, I don't know if that's a bad thing. But I think we're going to see some bump drafting. Really, we're not going to know what this package is going to do to these race cars until Sunday afternoon. I don't know how much drafting they're going to do during Friday and Saturday practice. Obviously, the Xfinity Series and everything is a completely different aero package, so that's not going to show us anything. We're really not going to know until the 500-mile race starts Sunday afternoon what the race is going to look like. And that's kind of exciting, but also kind of worrisome because it could suck. You never know. If I had to guess the type of racing we're going to see, and I'm basing this off of almost nothing, I think we might see something similar to what we saw, say, in 2012. That type of pack racing, where most of the time people were still in a 2-3 wide pack, kind of like what we have today, but the cars were a little closer together, and at times you could lock bumpers and two-car tandem your way through the field. That happened a little bit. You could maintain that for a lap or so before you'd start to overheat. I think the type of racing we'll see Sunday might be similar to what we saw, say, in 2012. But the awkward thing about bump drafting in these Gen 6 cars is the front noses, especially on like the Camaros, they're not perfectly flat. Like, this is technically a Gen 5 car. I know this is the car tomorrow. It's got the big wing. But if you look at the front bumper here, look at how flat and look at how square that is. Look at how like just squared off that nose is. That makes it really easy to bump draft somebody without getting them all loose and messed up. You hit them square and straight on, and it's not too big a deal. Whereas if I grab, say, here's a Gen 6 car, just look at the front nose of this thing. Still pretty flat, but it's definitely a little pointier there where that Toyota logo is. I know the Toyotas aren't running. This is a 2013 Toyota, so it's slightly different, but still, especially the Camaros, which I don't have a big Camaro car here to show you guys, but the Camaro's front ends are a little more triangular shaped. That's going to make bump drafting harder. So that's why when like Keselowski says, oh yeah, I think two-car tandem's going to come back, I'm a little skeptical just because, you know, maybe the aero package wants the cars to suck together and go two-car tandem style, but I just think the way the actual bodies of the cars are shaped and configured, I just don't know if that's really going to be the safest bet. But hey, time will tell. Obviously, Sunday afternoon could be a total crash fest. It could also be a total snooze fest with everyone just staying in a single file line because they're afraid to do anything. That's what I'm really afraid of. I'm afraid that the race is just going to turn into all the drivers being too scared to make a move until the last lap, and then it's too late to make anything happen. That's what we often see like in the Clash. It's the first race of the year. It doesn't really matter. All the drivers are kind of just feeling themselves out, you know. So nobody, you know, that race usually isn't that exciting. You know, this year that race was not exciting. They basically ran single file all race long because nobody wanted to tear their stuff up. I'm worried Talladega is going to be the same way, but maybe it won't. Maybe this aero package is just going to make these cars feel so drivable that guys don't have a problem making crazy moves at the beginning of this thing. Could be a great race, could be a terrible race. I honestly don't know, but I guess I want to put some of these thoughts in you guys' head, maybe give you guys an idea of what we could possibly expect. Obviously, Keselowski thinks it's going to be two-car tandem. I don't know if it's going to be that extreme, but we'll see. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you guys want to see two-car tandem racing return just for the restrictor plate races or the super speedway races? Sorry, they're not restrictor plate races anymore. Gotta purge that from my mind. Or would you guys rather see something like pack racing, like what we've seen in the last several years? Let me know down in the comments what you guys would like to see this weekend at Talladega, or at least what you think we're gonna see. You know, I guess at this point it doesn't really matter what you want to see. NASCAR's already made their decision. We're just gonna see how it works out. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. Continue the conversation over there. You can check out down by the description. I got Out of the Groove t-shirts available if you want to support me and support the show. Represent Out of the Groove. You can check those out. Also, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters: Michael Harrison, at G Was the Stars, SelfishGifts.com, Mentally Defective, Cameron James, John Koblentz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, Ross Corlett, TheRacingInsiders.com, and the rest of these amazing Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much for continuing to support me and support the show. I couldn't do this without you guys, so thank you a ton. Hopefully gonna have another episode up Friday. There's some other little news stories that I saw actually right before I hit record that I might want to make a video on here in a couple days, so keep an eye out for that. If any other big news stories break in the next couple days, you guys better believe I'll be here talking about them. So if I don't see you guys until this weekend though, hope you have a great rest of your week, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Bye y'all.